Guacamelee is one of my favorite games, guys, but it's such a fast, high-action game that has so much going on that before I can get into explaining why I love this game so much and why you should play it, I have to start it off slow with a brief explanation of the story. Now let me introduce you to Juan's world in Guacamelee. The story kicks off with Juan being woken up on the morning of the Day of the Dead by some random priest asking for help. Without questioning anything, he accepts this and goes to help him. At the beginning, Juan seems very generous. Along his way to Pueblucho, he meets many people who discriminate against him for not being a luchador, like this lady who's holding a fiesta only for luchadors, or this lady who's bragging about her brave son. Everything Juan isn't. So Juan meets up with the priest at the church, he punches some barrels like he normally would, but suddenly his childhood friend appears. She wants to meet up with him again, so she invites him to his mansion. He quickly rushes over there to meet her, but then the mansion explodes! He runs in, hoping to save his friend, but there he meets this guy, Calaca, the ruler of the underworld, who insults him for not being a luchador and challenges him to a 1v1. Did he die? He miraculously survives and rushes out to the city, but there's something off with the city he was just in. All the fun luchador promotion posters all now have Calaca on them. He finds this really cool looking statue with a mask covering above it. He meets this mysterious woman and then puts the mask on. So after putting the mask on, Juan finally becomes the luchador that he's always wanted to be. You know, you always see all these posters on his wall of luchador. It's very clear that he's always wanted to be one. And now that Juan is back in the world of the living, he sets off to find Calaca and save the girl. The combat, along with platforming, is the bread and butter of this game. It's all lucha wrestling. You can punch a guy, you can uppercut a guy, belly flop on a guy, and then throw him around. You can do all of those separately, but the combat really shines when you combine all of them. You design your own perfect combo that ends up being like a super ultra kill move. It all works so well because of that one punch, it feels so good to land, and then chaining those hits together, it feels even better. You want to keep punching the guys, not because they're blocking your way or they're right there, no, because it's so fun, absolutely demolishing the enemies using the moves you learn throughout the game. The major thing that keeps the game going, combat and platforming wise, is the abilities. You get them by destroying this goat man guy's statues. He gets really angry every single time you do it, but you gotta do it, and he understands. He also wants to date your mom. Looking at the abilities in this game, you'd think that they'd only be used for combat. They're all wrestling moves, but the game really goes crazy with them. They're used for combat, they're used for platforming, and unlocking new areas. The game pushes the abilities, your controller, to the absolute limit. When you get your first ability, the game takes it a bit slow. It's like, oh, here you go. You can use it to get back to where you were. And then it explains that you can use the ability to kill a really annoying enemy. And then you gotta use the combat ability as a platforming ability alongside the dodge button to avoid vines to get up there. And this is the first ability, mind you. Really early on, the game teaches you that you're going to need to learn how to use all of the abilities in combat and in platforming, sometimes even at the same time. Juan being able to go instantaneously from the world of the living to the world of the dead is a really cool story idea, but it's also one of the main gameplay mechanics. At any point, you can press the right trigger to swap dimensions, and the game uses this ability in some really cool ways. For combat, some enemies will be in either dimension. They can damage you from the other dimension, but you can't damage them. How rude. It can get really intense when you're fighting a bunch of dudes trying to dodge stuff and swap dimensions to kill them all. Combining that with the abilities and combos really makes for a satisfying fight if you manage to juggle all those different things and come out the victor. The dimension hopping is also used in platforming. Certain walls or platforms only exist in certain dimensions, so knowing how or when to get to the other dimension, combined with actually doing the platforming and ability use, is a really rewarding challenge. Zooming out from the gameplay, Guacamelee is designed like a Metroidvania game. There's this thing that developers do when making a game with that formula, is that they'll take bits of a Metroidvania they like and focus on those for their own game. Some are more Vania heavy, some are more Metroid heavy, some take specific elements from the genre, like the RPG parts for Castlevania, for example. Guacamelee doesn't have a maze-like world design. The world is actually really linear, with very little backtracking needed. What it does take is the ability progression system, where the game will show you cool stuff locked behind these walls, and then later in the game, when you get the power-up needed needed to open that pathway, you'll think, oh, I know exactly where to use this. They're easily remembered because the walls are a specific color that match the ability. Now that's actually a part of the game where there's a lot of room for improvement. These barriers are so obvious and stand out from the design of the world that they look like what the developers used before they come up with a natural look for them. But no, they just look like that. These slam floors could have easily just been cracked normal floor with a slight color tint only breakable by the frog slam. Can you imagine how much better and more natural that would look? Well, no need, I did an edit to show you. Look how much better this is and how it's actually consistent with the art style of the game while still being obvious enough for you to know to use your moves there. Guacamelee is such a fun mix of all the best of many genres. It has amazing, extremely fitting music which you've been listening to this whole time. All of that expertly put together into such an unforgettable experience. It takes the bare minimum from a Metroidvania, but what it does take adds so much to the game. It makes it so much more interesting than just a fighting and platforming game where all you do is just go straight forward. The game has these like large cities with side quests that are really fun to complete with interesting characters, these giant stones that eat chicken, recurring characters that challenge you to become better and better until you can finally fight them. The world design makes moving forward really fun and exciting. The platforming abilities feed into the combat, and then the whole game is set in this beautiful depiction of Mexico, full of vibrant colors, people, and a gorgeous art direction to tie the whole game together.